Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today are SwimSwam co-founders, Braden Keith and Mel Stewart. And that is right, folks. We are here to break down the 2021 Olympic Games in Tokyo. We are bringing you our top races and giving you the full preview of what to expect next week from Tokyo. We're discussing in this podcast the first 3 days of action to give you a little preview of the biggest races coming right out of the gate from the 2021 Olympic Games. Braden, Mel, we're starting with the women's 400 free relay. The question is simple. Will anyone beat Australia and dethrone the reigning Olympic champions?
I don't think so. I mean, when you look at the field, if the U.S. was second last time with Simone's overtraining and nobody really kind of moving up to the next rung in the ladder, and then, Canada, Taylor Ruck is having some problems. Great Britain is probably a leg or two short. It's just Australia probably doesn't even have to be at their best. We all know about some of the problems that their sprinters have had individually, but those don't seem to show up as much in relays. And then McKeon is swimming well. I don't think Australia even has to be within 2 seconds of their world record to win this. I think they're just gonna blow everybody away.
Yeah, in this race, also worth noting at Australia's Olympic trials, they had 4 women go 52. At US had none. I think we have a history of performing well at the Olympics and maybe even better, but yeah, it's not looking good. I think the Netherlands might be. You mentioned
they're 2 legs short.
Too short, but
yeah,
I don't think they have 452s, and that seems like that seems pretty possible of what you're going to need to get gold.
The only chance anybody has is if the pool in Adelaide is not actually 50 meters long, which has been a popular conspiracy theory in the comment section lately.
This is a wah Team USA conversation you guys are having, and I wanted that. I'm gonna have to back you up on it. In the past, we've always seen that Australia has performed on their island continent, and then they on balance they don't necessarily perform when they're leaving. But I think they have the benefit of being in the same time zone, and I think that's a little bit too hard to overcome. And I'll leave it there.
If Mel Captain America Stewart is picking Australia, it's a real pick.
I can't believe that I'm picking Australia because I'm going to hear about this from old Olympians. They're going to be like, Mel, what's going on? And
you're going to hear about this from old American Olympians.
Correct. I am. And they're going to be upset about it. And the reality is I did get past calculus. So I have a little bit of background in math, and it doesn't make sense.
I have a quick follow-up question on this. Do we think Simone will be on the finals relay? I'm saying yes.
I think she's got to swim prelims to earn the spot. I don't think they give her the final spot. I think she's got to swim prelims. And with this relay we've got, she'd have to on a rolling start be 53.5 in prelims to make the team, to make the finals group. But I think she's got to swim it in prelims. And she doesn't have a lot of races, so why not have her swim it in prelims?
I don't know where her head's at. I mean, I think that she's gone through so much stress and trauma over the last year. I think that's really what was baked into the trials performance. But if she swims prelims, I think she's on the finals relay.
So you think she'll do what she needs to do in prelims?
I think that she will. This is what I think. I think when you go into the bubble of the pressure of the Olympic Games, you see people crumble. You see them it's like you go to Disneyland with them, because that's what the Olympics is like. It's like this big corporate Disneyland. Everyone starts looking all over the place. They do everything. They're in every little social get together. and their energy goes down. Their head isn't in the race, and that's not going to be a problem for her. So she sims prelims.
Well, it's not going to be much of a problem this year because everybody's in a bubble anyway. There's no distractions.
Yeah, that's right. So that's a good point. Just in the past, I was just explaining this to somebody who's a non-swimmer, and they're like, "What? Tell me about the Olympics." And I'm like, "Hey guys, this is the deal. What you realize on your first Olympics, and sometimes it takes you 2 Olympics to get past this, and to really swallow this nut, is that you're going to a massive corporate convention, and you are the sideshow, and it's really uncomfortable, and it's not fun." And swimmers are globally are used to being in a cushy lifestyle, short trips to the venue, staying in a hotel, and it's a problem. But this time around, I think you're correct. That's going to factor in, and that's you might see some younger swimmers pop with some great performances.
Can we digress for a minute, Colin? I'm going off schedule. So I think there's an interesting psychology happening this year, and I think this could hurt the Americans' big picture. The U.S., without getting too political, in the U.S., COVID is over for all intents and purposes. The pandemic is over. In Japan, the pandemic is still very real, even though their cases are far lower than ours. When I looked at social media, from the U.S. team in Hawaii, I saw some things that looked to me like young people who have been cooped up in their houses and are now getting this chance to be with their peers. And I saw distractions. I saw a lot of distractions. I saw pictures of athletes downing 1,500 calorie milkshakes that I wouldn't think you'd be drinking 10 days before the Olympics. It's one thing to have a scoop of ice cream, but I just saw distractions in Hawaii, and it's Hawaii. Everybody's on vacation in Hawaii, and now that they're going to Japan, again, I think when they're just Team USA, it's going to continue to be a little free, but a lot of those things are going to go away, and so it's like they go to Hawaii, they're on vacation and training, and now they go to Japan, and they're sort of going to be snapped back into the thick of pandemic restrictions and lockdowns and hotel to venue and all that stuff. And I wonder how that psychology is going to play out for the Americans, because no other countries have loosened up as much as we have. So no other athletes are going to be dealing with this sort of, I don't think, this sort of, whiplash back and forth between open and pandemic and open and pandemic.
These are all unknowns. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know what sort of pressure Diaceto is dealing with in Japan. We don't know what if there's a country that's been really locked down. Canada's been extremely strict. We don't know what the effect's going to be, because this is we get these once every 100 years. I will say this: when you're traveling with a national team, it is an ecosystem. You are an island, and you can survive and subsist on that social interaction, because it's that works. And I think that's positive. I think that keeps people from getting depressed, because there's always someone to talk to. There's always someone to mentor you. But I do think it's funny that basically the athletes went on their training camp, and I would have hated to have been admin or a manager, because the concept of herding kittens went up tenfold, and it looked to me like it was like, woo, we're on vacation. It's I almost got kicked off the 1988 Olympic team out of training camp in Hawaii because of a toilet paper bomb incident, and where my roommate Lars Jorgensen at the University of Kentucky cried. Mel Stewart didn't cry. If he tells the story, he cried. But we almost get kicked off the team.
Follow-up podcast.
We were threatened with that. But I do think that people make mistakes, and but that goes into the whole concept of like going to an Olympics and the excitement of it, and the Disneyland aspect of it, and who stays focused and who doesn't. But Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about everybody. I'm worried about the Olympics being not as fast.
Which is funny because we've seen so many fast swims around the world. Australia being a great example to bring it back full circle. But at some point, everything comes crashing down, right? At some point, the house of cards can only stand for so long.
So on this topic, let's go ahead and get it out of the way. No fans. I mean, what this is going to be like that dual meet that we had in high school, where the coaches are cheering on the side. It's like, can the teams bring enough energy to that arena to create and to create the kind of emotion that you need to pop fast swims? Is that possible? And I've got a story for that one too.
Well, and did anybody cry in this story? I hope so. Will Japan see the home team pop? That's the question for me. And that's something we discussed when doing our previews, because the host team always gets a little bit of a boost across sports. And I guess we don't really know if that's because they're local, they're familiar with the venues, or if that's because the crowd gets behind them. And we might find that out this year. I don't know. I think it matters to an extent, but so much of swimming is also controlling the emotion and sticking to your race plan and all that stuff. How many records have we seen broken in time trials with nobody in the stands? I think it could matter more in basketball. I think it could matter more in other sports than it will in swimming, where it's about coming in with a plan and executing that plan the way that you've trained it 1,000 times.
I'm going to share one moment in history. This is applicable. Back before when the Pan Pacific Championship started, it was the Pan Pacific Games. Everyone wanted to go to the Pan American Games because it was on network television. If you were in the United States, Canada, you wanted to go to the Pan Am Games because it was like going to the Olympics, but it wasn't as fast. So we go to this competition called the Pan Pacific Games, now Pan Pacific Championships. We go to Tokyo. We're in Tokyo in the 1964 Olympic pool. No fans. Huge arena, zero energy. The meet is 4 days. For 3 days, it sucks. Like, it is slow. I mean, people are walking around going, this is terrible. Nobody's swimming fast. I've been to more exciting dual meets in high school. And all the captains from the national teams got together and had a meeting. So all the older teammates got together and said, we got to turn this around.
From all the countries? All the countries.
And they said, we've got to cheer for everyone. We've got to create an atmosphere. And they did it. And the experience we went in there and acted like it was the greatest competition that had ever been in history. And people went nuts. And on the final day of the first Pan Pacific Championships back in, that was the second one. It was 1989. There were 4 world records. So energy can be created, and I'm wondering if they're going to do the same thing. I'm wondering if teams are going to get together and go, look, we gotta hold hands, and we got to be in this together to make this exciting and create the energy.
But there's this whole thing with some of the swimmers where the best teammate you can be is by going home and recovering, not staying and cheering. There's a lot of American teams that hold that philosophy. I think Cal is kind of famous for that philosophy. So will they want to adapt that philosophy? And depending on when you're listening to this podcast, there have been murmurs. We're recording this Friday morning. There have been murmurs now that if the COVID situation turns around quick in Japan, that they might start letting fans back in. So this conversation could become moot again. But this is the COVID pandemic, right? One day to the next, everything changes. So we'll see.
Take us back to the pool, Coleman.
Well, also on that note, I think because there's no fans allowed, because people have to and teams have to stay so isolated, I think it would be a lot harder for teams from other countries to gather or unite in any form, right? I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's harder to have contact with other people because of
but they're all connected already because of things like the ISL. So they're all on big WhatsApp threads, and I think that there are digital ways for them to connect. Whether that's as effective as putting the captains together in a room is up for debate, but I'm sure they're all in contact.
That's a good point. Okay, back to the pool. On day two, some of our biggest races. I think day two is a huge day. We start with the women's 100 fly. Will Sarah Sjostrom swim it?
I'm going no. I think she's been good. I think she's been looking better than anybody thought she would have coming out of that broken elbow. But the women's 100 fly is getting good. She, even before the broken elbow, she had the back problem, and she didn't win the world championship in 2019. So I think if she is going to look at her meet and evaluate her best medal chances and focus on them, I think the 100 fly is probably the least likely event. It feels weird to say, but because she was so dominant for so long, I think that's the least likely event for her to win. So I think she will not swim it.
I don't see her swimming it. However, it's when I see this event, I'm completely compromised because I feel like we've been covering Maggie McNeil for so long, and I'm such a huge fan of hers, and I'm torn between Maggie and Tori, but they're both going to be on the podium. This race. This is the race where you're on the couch and you're eating the popcorn and you forget who you are and you're fully immersed in the Olympic experience. I've got to be honest with you. I kind of wish Braden was sitting next to me on the couch because I want to know what he thinks about this event.
Well, Mel, today's podcast is brought to you by Daniel Takata's Olympic Guide. And if you had your Olympic Guide open, you would see that neither Maggie McNeil nor Tori Husk is the top seed. China's Zhang Yufei is the top seed. And, I could see one of those three missing the podium. You got to have confidence in Maggie McNeil because she has shown us several times that she can go fast and then go faster. She always swims well at the big meets, and everybody likes to think that their favorite swimmer always swims well at the big meets, but the reality is many of them don't. And Maggie has over and over again stepped up at the big meets. So I'd pick her with probably Zhang from China second, and then Tori's tough. We don't have a lot of data points on how she might follow up. She doesn't have the conference NCAA background. We don't know how she's going to follow up the time from trials. And so if I had to pick one of those three to miss the podium, it would probably be her.
I'm going to call it differently. I'm calling it differently. Maggie wins. Maggie wins gold. Emma silver. I see Husk battling for the podium and squeaking onto the podium. But
now, how many times are you going to pick Australians to beat the Americans today?
Yeah.
You're going to have to return your gold medals. They're going to ask for them back.
I'll have them sitting on I'll have them ready to be FedExed back to my peers.
I'm with you guys. I don't think Sjostrom swims this. I think she put up a solid 100 fly in Rome, enough for a Greg Troy style entry of, hey, let's put it in and then scratch it at the last minute and focus on her real chance or her better chances, I should say, in the 150 free. Moving on from the 100 fly, women's 400 free is all about Ledecky versus Titmus round one. And this is really the middle ground for them in 2019. Obviously, we saw Titmus upset Ledecky at the World Championships. Titmus seems to have a little bit more natural speed. She was 153 low at trials. Ledecky obviously has the distance prowess, goes up to the mile, while Titmus stops the 800. So this is their middle ground race. I think round one will be possibly the closest of their three matchups. What do you guys see here?
I think it's first of all just great that we have a race with Katie Ledecky in it again, because I think it's hard to appreciate when she's winning by 25 meters. It's hard to appreciate how good she is when she's just blowing everybody out of the water. And I think this is an opportunity for her to prove herself as a air quotes racer and see if she can win when she's seriously challenged, because this is going to be one of the biggest challenges, aside from 2019 when she was sick and all the health issues she was having. But this is going to be a big challenge, and it's the same conversation as I think a lot of the races, especially on the women's side, are going to be. It's, do we think Australia can carry it forward to the games? That's going to be a theme of these Olympics. Ledecky didn't need to be great at U.S. trials, but she also didn't look great. And so you can, the argument over here is, oh, Ledecky will turn it on when she needs to. She'll turn it on when she needs to. I think Titmus has the momentum, and I think young and momentum and something to prove is going to mean a lot at these Olympics coming out of the pandemic. It's hard to see Titmus getting beat based on what we saw from Ledecky at trials. But again, we don't know what Australia is going to do on this short turnaround. It's like their national DNA, their coaches don't have experience with this because this is the first year they've tried this short turnaround on trials. So we'll see how they handle it. But right now, it's hard to ignore her momentum.
This makes me think of the conversation we just had in the last week with Ryan Murphy. And it's like, Ryan, we know that Katie Ledecky trained through trials, but did you like talk to her and like, you know, like what was she working out in the morning? Was she putting up 6,000 meters a day, or, you know, or did she just, you know, she just trained hard up until trials when she left? And he's like, no, Mel, wasn't standing outside her hotel room asking her those questions, because that would be like a 16-year-old boy who just made the national team. But I would have done that. This is the deal. Only one person on earth that I can think of who's from a top swimming nation did what she did, which is like shoulder shrug. I'm just going to roll through trials. And it makes me think that she's done the work. It makes me think that the base is in place, and it makes me think that she's so dialed in that we're taking her for granted again. So I'm calling Ledecky. And I also think I've also felt for a long time that she's capable of putting a time up in one particular event, or, you know, it's never all of them, but it's in one particular race. I could see her putting a time that is eye popping. My hope is that it's the 400 free. I'd love to see her put something out there where everyone's jaw goes slack and it's like, whoa, what, 355? Are you kidding me? But
so Mel, answer this. Who do you think the oldest top 16 seed in the women's 400 free at the Olympics is?
Is it Ledecky?
It's Ledecky.
I
mean, these races are a young swimmer's race. She is 24 years and 130 days old as of the start of the Olympics.
Yeah, so
she is the oldest.
Yeah, but there's a lot of science, there's a lot of data behind the fact, and we see this in all sports, where if you actually do the work, you build aerobic base and you build power, and you can do it into your 30s if you're consistent. It just takes enormous discipline. The problem with swimmers is that we're in this environment where you're you know, it's silent, you're alone, it's harder, and and that's why we see people sort of wane as they get older. No, I think
but I mean, when you look at the Stanford group, they struggled with that in the last year. Based on results, that was a challenge for them. And Ledecky, we know, is a different breed of swimmer. She's got a different mentality, but there's a lot of evidence to support Ledecky not winning this race. And of course, Ledecky has made a career on beating the evidence, but it's not a bad pick to not pick Ledecky in this race for the first time in a long time.
If you'd talked about this first, I might have done it differently. But since you called me out and said I'm picking Australians to win, I had to back off. So you completely manipulated me, but that's fine. Let's move on.
We're moving on. We're finally getting to a men's race. I think the first really big men's race that's like kind of a question mark is the men's 400 free relay. I don't even know if it's a question mark. The question is, can anyone dethrone us, the USA? Because I think we've won this for the last since 16. I think we've been undefeated. Is that right? I mean, we got DQ'd, right? The Pan Packs, but
yes.
Yeah.
The infamous DQ.
Right. We got DQ'd for swimming in the wrong
out of order. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't even a false start. So
yeah.
We've put up the fastest time. And even in 2019, our B team at World U games, I think would have either medaled or gotten fourth at world champs. So it's like we've become quite deep in the men's 100 free specifically. Is anyone? I'm sure someone will challenge us. Will anyone beat us?
There's all this talk about, will the U.S. win a men's relay? Will the U.S. win any relay? Probably. We'll probably win the mixed medley, but will the U.S. men win a relay? And this has got to be, on paper, I'd say the best shot. I think this is a better shot than the 400 medley relay. Maybe you guys disagree. But Russia with Klement Kolesnikov coming kind of, he had some health, some injury problems, and he's seeming to come into his own and fulfill the prophecies that he had as a teenager. And it's funny because for Russia, the question mark leg is Vlad Morozov. And you never thought you'd say that Vlad Morozov would be the question mark leg for a Russian relay, but they've got three really great legs, and he has not been great. He's been training in the U.S. He and Yulia Efimova are joining the team late, so they're skipping the training camps. So I think Vlad is the one who can beat the U.S. I think it's squarely on his shoulders. If he splits a 47-6, I think Russia wins it.
Oh man, that analysis is fantastic, and it makes me think back to 2016 when the Russians went through all of the doping drama, and I think they have a lot to prove here. But I do think that this is the mixed medley relay and the 4x1 freestyle relay I think this is Team USA. It's hard to overcome. I just don't think it's possible. But also Vlad Morozov, I see him performing on a relay in these circumstances with so much to prove, but I still don't think it's enough to overcome Team USA. You're smiling. Here's the thing. We'll let the audience in on something. I don't know what I think. I never know what I think until I talk to Braden first. So you tell me, Braden.
The U.S. has some good legs. I think a Ryan Held 47 would have made me more confident in them. I think the U.S. has a really tough decision to make on their finals relay. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on the coaching staffs in this one to put the right relay up there. And I think there's a chance they could miss. I don't know. Either one could win. We'll find out.
I mean, breaking down the U.S.'s relay, yeah, it's like we don't have Nathan. We don't have Ryan Held. They've both been dependable when they've been on the national teams. Dressel leadoff, not worried about that. Although historically he does get faster throughout the meet, so he's almost always his slowest time of the meet leading off the 400 free relay. So that's something, but he will still go fast. I think, I'm guessing he'll go 47 mid. Then let's say we have Apple at an anchor and we have Peroni third. And I'm confident with those legs. But then we have that fourth spot to fill, as Braden was alluding to. That's going to be a coaching decision. We have Bo Becker and Brooks Curry, who both made the team for the relay. Obviously, they'll be prelim swimmers. Is there anyone else who didn't make it in that 100 free who you think they would put on the finals relay, or who could even maybe swim a prelims relay?
I don't think we have that this year. That's in the post-Phelps era. I think we've lost a lot of that sort of wild card to throw in there. You counter with the Russians. Kolesnikov was faster at his trials than Dressel was. Minikov was 47.5 late last year, and he's young. Brunav's 47.8, and I think he's been 47.5, and then Vlad at 48.00. I mean, if you're counting on the U.S. on Bo Becker or Brooks Curry, those are guys without a lot of international experience. Those are guys who probably sold out at trials to make the team. Bo Becker has arthritis that flares, so that's an unknown for the Americans that they'll have to deal with. I don't know, man. The like when you look at it, you want to pick the Americans, especially with Dressel as sort of the ace card. But when you look through the 1 to 4 and you get to 4 and you ask, do I trust Vlad or do I trust Brooks Curry, who is a great swimmer and has a great future, but feels like maybe Paris is his time? If it comes down to that, I'm taking Vlad Morozov.
Russell leads off under sub 47. Apple is going to anchor. He's going to dip under 47. This guy was grinning through trials every single race. He'd finish that race. He's barely breathing. He turns around, looks at the camera. The dude grins. I've never seen anyone do that at trials before. It's like there was like some private little secret, which is I have this massive muscle mass. I've dropped a 344 400 yard IM and 140 200 fly like months ago, unshaven, and I'm only rested for 3 weeks. I got 3 more weeks of rest in me. So I think that there's a possibility that he's right under 47 on a leadoff, and I think Apple's a star. I think he's a leader, and I see him anchoring. What was his best anchor? Was it a 46?
6.8.
46.8. Yeah, I mean, if he's around 46 mid, it's pretty tight. Look at Brady.
Big call though. 46 mid's a big call. I mean, you can do 46 mid if you're riding somebody's wake, but can you do it if you've got a lead? We're gonna have another Duncan Scott rundown.
We're
not even talking about the Brits.
Yeah.
We don't have confidence in the Brits?
It's like you were saying, Braden. I think for Britain, their foreleg is just not there yet. Because obviously they have the young talent and the rising stars to get there. But yeah, it's like they have Duncan, they have Tom Dean, who's solid, James Guy, who's solid, and then I think there 4 Jacob Whittle.
Yeah, Matt Richards or Jacob Whittle.
Okay.
That'll be probably a game time decision, but one of them could pop. If one of them Popovici's the race and just goes, because that's the comparison, right? That's the group of 3. That's the future of sprinting. If one of them Popovici's the race, then we have a whole different conversation.
Agreed. Yeah, and that could be a game changer for Britain, obviously. But it's a 4 and 3 relay. We're divided, but up in the air. The last race I want to talk about on this podcast is the women's 100 backstroke. And again, Australia is leading that one with Kaylee McEwen. But then we've got Kylie Moss, who's been 57. We've got Reagan, obviously, former world record holder, also 57. And that's just the top of the field. What are you seeing in this race?
This is going to be such a good race. I think U.S. trials with Kathleen Baker's injury maybe was a little bit of a letdown. But I think it's such a good race. There's the knowns. There's, we can't forget about Kira Toussaint, who's the 8th seed, who was breaking world records in short course left and right. There's 10 or 12 swimmers in this who could easily medal, and some of them are not going to make the final. Kylie Moss I think, continues to be underrated out of Canada because I don't know why. Kaylee McEwen, I would pick to win, but I think there's going to be a whole lot of 57s in this field. Kathleen Dawson has a lot of momentum. The Scottish backstroker, who is, again, one of these swimmers who is dropping. Every time she swims, it feels like she's breaking a record. I'd pick Kaylee McEwen to win it, and then after that, it's going to go a dozen different ways. This is one that's going to separate people in the SwimSwam Pick'em contest. Taylor Ruck, among the top seeds, is the one I would probably have less confidence in, just because she struggled at trials, and what we know about Canada having a pretty tough lockdown. But I don't know. I'll let Mel pick this one, and I won't give him a hard time for it.
Kira Toussaint Vol makes the podium. I'm sorry.
Now loves more than Americans. Our Tennessee Volunteers.
I'm an alum. I'm gonna, as a journalist, I would like to disclose that I'm an alum.
So how do you feel about Alabama Crimson Tide swimmer Ryan White? She's an American, but she swam for Alabama.
My next allegiance is to the SEC. She also makes the podium. No, this is here. I'm a fan of Toussaint. Obviously, just follow her social, beaming, super cool person. Just a big entertainer in terms of a performer. I don't think she has it in the long pool. The long pool's not there. I'm with you. I don't see anybody beating McEwen. It's just not. It's not there. I do see Massey. I see Massey threatening for gold, but I don't think she has enough to edge McEwen. I'm concerned about Reagan. Reagan was when Reagan did what she did at 2019 World Championships. I thought in the 100 back 53, 57.3, 203. What was she go through? 203.3.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah. It's yes. When I saw those swims, I was just everything falls away, and I'm like, I think we witnessed a moment like Mary T. Maher back in 1980 and 1981 in the 200 fly and the 100 fly. I thought it was that fast. I thought it was that much. I thought they were outlier performances. I cannot believe how wrong I was. And I cannot believe we're in a situation where I'm going, if she makes the podium, as someone who would be cheering for a Team USA team, I'd call a bronze medalist success. I think she's in the fight for her life to make the podium. I could see Ryan White making the podium. She's on fire.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with the Ryan White point. I think you're both wrong. I think in terms of momentum for this period, for this pocket of time, Reagan has nothing to lose at this point. She made the Olympic team. You could tell when she made the 100 back, you saw it on her face. There was just so much relief. She had a lot of pressure to make that team, her first Olympic team. And she swam every day of trials aside from the last day. She swam 7 days in a row, half of those prelims finals, half of those just finals. So she had an event every day. So by the time she got to the 200 back, she was toast. And we obviously saw that by her getting third. So I think coming off of training camp, like you guys alluded to, she was having fun. She's with a big group of teenagers on Team USA. She's with her peers. She can let her hair down. She's gotten to relax, and she knows what she needs to focus on now. 100 back, 2 fly. She only has 2 events to worry about. Whereas McEwen is
plus the relay.
Plus the relay, yeah. But it's like she knows what she's doing. McEwen, 3 events, and she's got a ton of pressure. I mean, she has taken over that limelight from Reagan Smith, literally by breaking her world record by only a 10th, by the way. And albeit it was this year.
Only a 10th.
Hey, I'm just saying it wasn't like by a second. Okay. So I'm saying McEwen's in that limelight now. She's never been there before. And I'm guessing she's feeling a little more pressure, whereas Reagan, like Mel said, it's like expectations are kind of low now. It's like, oh, if you medal, thumbs up. So I think Reagan takes it. I think Reagan takes it.
We can't forget that Kylie Moss is the world record or the defending world champion and
time, right?
Yeah, and she won a best time this year, which not a lot of swimmers have. Reagan certainly hasn't.
I'm confused. Did Coleman just pick Reagan to win?
Yeah.
Move on.
So that's it for this podcast. Those were our highlights for the first 3 days of the 2021 Olympic Games. Stay tuned because we will be previewing all 5 of the rest of the days of those Olympic Games. Until then, tune in to SwimSwam.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.